Tune in! You can now listen to Mark Roman Empire, also a podcast, on TuneIn. TuneIn joins Stitcher, YouTube, SoundCloud, and more platforms where you can hear this podcast. There's even an Apple Music hack until we penetrate that marvelous walled garden. For the complete and frequently updated list, go to markromanempire.com and click Listen. Did you catch last week's, the weekly Best Podcast Listener contest passphrase? Yeah, but did you use it? Okay, maybe you don't want a free Lieutenant Frank glossy photo autographed plus surprise bonus. How to win, how to win. If only there was a page on the website labeled Win. We are sponsored by Vegas 90210. Lieutenant Frank, as hired by a California Highway Patrolman for a CHP Lieutenant Promotion Luncheon, as hired by a wedding party in Vegas to escort bride and groom from limo to the Bellagio, as hired by a California Highway Patrol Lieutenant for a birthday party this weekend, Lieutenant Frank, Hollywood Cap, Beetlejuice, Ron Burgundy, more. About your Halloween or other holiday parties? Got any characters of Vegas 90210? Book one today at vegas90210.com. Should we start the podcast? I vote yes. You're nobody till somebody loves you. Spreading the news like mayonnaise on toast. The policy of truth. Gary, I have a mission for you. Eastbound and down, loading up and truck 'em. Flux capacitor? Okay. But let me tell you about that time I drove a cab. Money that's something, chicks that read. I want my Mark TV. First, you're not on TV. Podcast. Now, that is some weird and wild stuff. Did you know that, Ed? Yes! Oh, please don't drop me home, because it's not my home, it's their home, and I'm welcome no more. Well, Robin attended Juilliard. I attended Hillsdale. I'm a graduate of the San Francisco Comedy College. I've traveled the Midwest quite extensively. I lived through The Big Short and I had a pretty good time doing that. I've seen Pat Robertson jabber about 167 times, and it keeps getting funnier every single time I see it. Not to mention the fact you're talking to a subversive. So what do you think? Do you think I'm qualified?
Oh, well, I think we'll need to pray about that and ask your father.
Shut up, Marilyn! Just eat it. Just eat it. The Mark Roman Empire. Also, a podcast. It's showtime. In the middle of the road, you see the darndest things, like fat guys driving around in Jeeps through the city, wearing big diamond rings and silk suits, past corrugated tin shacks full up with kids. Oh man, I don't mean a Hampstead nursery. When you own a big chunk of the bloody third world, the babies just come with the scenery. Oh, come on, baby, get in the road. Oh, come on now, in the middle of the road, yeah. That was my Mark Yoki of Middle of the Road by the Pretenders, because now that this podcast is, count them, double digits, episode number 10, baby. Definitely not too soon to finally kind of cover a song by a band helmed by a lady. As Chrissy Hines sings, too many fat guys driving around in Jeeps through the city, wearing big diamond rings and silk suits, past corrugated tin shacks full up with kids. Babies just come with the scenery? Can we change that? Should only women ask those kind of questions? Oh, hell no. Today, we are going to kind of get into it with my first podcast election special just in time for the midterm. So grab your ballot and buckle in. I'm going to complete mine while in conversation with some friends from Ground Game LA. Oh, hi there. I'm Mark Roman. Mark who? Mark Roman. You know, like the Empire. I'll go over my ballot with Ace Katana, and hopefully he's brought a lady from my favorite grassroots organization, Ground Game LA. A fantastic organization that rose like a phoenix out of Jessica Salon's campaign against LA City Councilperson Mitch Oh Where Are You, the Cruise Ship Act, who considers buskers criminals. You know, we had a good run at Young Records in North Hollywood. But Hollywood proper, that is really the epicenter of my world. It's where I live. It's where Lieutenant Frank debuted and first performed. It's where Tom Lennon would not once, not twice, but 3 times drove down the boulevard yelling, "Mark," while I was suited up as Lieutenant Frank. It's where Hollywood Cat performs. Paramount's here, one of the many studios where I've worked as a SAG-AFTRA actor. It's the Academy Awards, the Oscars at the Dolby Theater. It's that other guy with a fledgling podcast, Jimmy. It's on the tip of my tongue. Something, I don't know. You know, in the Shriners Museum next to the Mickey Mouse soda fountain. Yeah, that one. Hollywood is where I met Ollie Holliday across the street at Jameson's Pub on Hollywood Boulevard. Ollie is the guy who kept bugging me about starting my own podcast. He said, and I quote, "It'll be a proper podcast." He's the guy who led me to Young Records, where I had a wonderful experience. I wish Austin at Young Records all the best. Now, I am a working artist. I pull off quite a few magic acts each week just to make this podcast happen. Every penny, every second, every animated word I speak counts enormously in my world. So when Ollie approached me with an opportunity that could help me ensure the longevity and consistency of the podcast, as well as bring me home to Hollywood, how could I not say yes? Which brings us to our new recording home. Yes, right here, the world-famous Musicians Institute here in Hollywood. On Hollywood Boulevard, carefully nestled between a Tom Cruise Scientology hostel and a place serving not half bad Mediterranean cuisine on your way to the Ripley's Believe It or Not tourist trap. Ollie, thank you, brother, for making this podcast possible. And thank you with that sound engineering voodoo you do for making me sound like a chorus of butterfly unicorns batting their eyelashes at Daniel Craig, carrying his child like a man. Ollie, how is Prince Harry? Ollie's using the international sign for pretty groovy, yeah. I just want to know, is it kind of weird that he's going to be a dad? I mean, are we ready for that? You know, more Charles Dickens nostalgia from, is it Piercy Morgan? Pouty Morgan. Piers Morgan? Oh, Piers. Yeah, like the open air porta potties for seagulls. Piers. Got it. Beckham Dano. Oh. Shut up, Marilyn. Some Mark Twain nuggets this week, courtesy of our good friends over at Goodreads, who are good enough to follow me on my Twitter, at @TheMarkRoman. Let's get another Mark with a K and hear what he has to say here. I think it's a good way to start off the election special podcast here. So this is from Mark Twain. I was gratified to be able to answer promptly, and I did. I said I didn't know. Loyalty to country, always. Loyalty to government, when it deserves it. Reader, suppose you were an idiot. And suppose you were a member of Congress. But I repeat myself. God created wars so that Americans would learn geography. If you tell the truth, you don't have to remember anything. A lie can travel halfway around the world while the truth is putting on its shoes. I think I've also heard the version where it gets out of bed, but you know how these quotes get all mangled. And that's even before they got halfway around the world. Anyway, back to the good Sir Mark Twain. Is he a sir? Was he ever knighted? He should have been. So Sir Mark Twain, let us hear from you. But a bit more. The man who does not read has no advantage over the man who cannot read. I have never let my schooling interfere with my education. Keep away from people who try to belittle your ambitions. Small people always do that. But the really great make you feel that you, too, can become great. And finally, from Mark of the Twain, what would men be without women? Scarce, sir, mighty scarce. 8675309. That's right. It's the numbers. $5.6 billion. That's Amazon's profit in 2017. $127 million. That's Amazon's tax. Oh, it's not what they paid. It's their tax credit in 2017. So yes, not only did we all give money to Amazon for the stuff we got from Amazon, not only did I pay Amazon to watch Jack Ryan last night, Tom Clancy's Jack Ryan, it was good, but I also, along with you and everyone else who is a tax-paying citizen of America, we paid part of Amazon's $127 million tax credit for 2017. 9,060, the number of citations Lieutenant Frank has issued citizens to date. 1,469, the number of connections of mine as Mark Roman on LinkedIn. 1,463, the number of followers of my Vegas 90210 on Instagram. 1,101, the number of followers of my @TheMarkRoman on Twitter. 749, the number of likes of Mark Roman Empire page on Facebook. 149, the number of listens of the most popular episode of this podcast to date. 221, the number of female members of Congress, if Congress reflected the population. 137, the number of congressional patriarchy, the men holding seats belonging to women. 84, the number of actual female members of Congress, which means 51. Sorry, we did Congress. Now we're going to senators. 51, the number of female U.S. senators if the U.S. Senate reflected the population. 40, the percentage of Americans who vote in midterm elections. 28, the number of U.S. Senate patriarchy, men holding seats belonging to women, which means 23, the number of actual female U.S. senators. 6, the number of the day, a Tuesday, in November of the election. 0, the amount of federal taxes Amazon paid in 2017. The Mark Roman Empire, also a podcast, is sponsored by Vegas 90210, the characters of Vegas 90210, my infamous Lieutenant Frank in women's short shorts and rainbow tactical leg warmers, as seen in The Hollywood Reporter. I fucking love this guy, blurted Bill Burr on his All Things Comedy, Bill Burr's Guide to Driving Etiquette, Pedestrians. He's a really big dude. He looks really good. He's a lot bigger than me. That's how the OG Lieutenant Dangle, Thomas Lennon of Reno 911 and Lethal Weapon, described me on the Jeselnik offensive on Comedy Central. Anthony Jeselnik? Oh, Amy Schumer's ex. Oh, yeah. But I digress. Lieutenant Frank, recently hired by a California highway patrolman for a CHP lieutenant promotion luncheon at Bank of California Stadium at Echo Park. That CHP lieutenant seemed to enjoy my performance. He just hired me for the birthday party coming up. So, what about your event? Got Lieutenant Frank? Or Hollywood Cap? The Captain America of the Hollywood Avengers. Ron Burgundy, Buddy the Elf, and Beetlejuice, available by special order. There's a reason they say I put the I in improv. It's what your upcoming birthday, office grand opening, or other event truly needs. Book a Vegas 90210 character for your event today at Vegas90210.com. Want $5 while supporting this podcast? Try the Cash App I did. Link to debit card, then send at least $5 via Cash App, and $5 was instantly added to my Cash App account. I even tipped my toe into Bitcoin, finally. Thanks to Cash App. It was super easy. Hey, other podcasters got all that Fear Factor and MMA money. Use my code WKXRVBX to support me and earn your $5 with Cash App, available in your app store. The Mark Roman Empire, also a podcast, sponsored by Eladon Designs. There's got to be a better way to travel with your shoes. Now, there is. The trademarked Ultimate Shoe Bag by Eladon Designs. Travel your shoes easier. Up to 8 pairs at a time, many styles to choose. To view the commercial and demo video, go to eladondesigns.com. Hey, save 10% when you use discount code ROMAN at checkout. eladondesigns.com. Tiger's Blood. Winning. This week's Mark Roman Empire, also a podcast, Best Listener Contest passphrase is vote on November 6th. Sorry, we do that again here, kids. The contest passphrase is vote on Tuesday, November 6th, as if you were not a white frat boy. It's important to have that passphrase correct if you want to win. Just go to markromanempire.com, click win for the details on all of that. So let's talk a little bit about my politics, okay? Because this is the election special, all right? We got folks coming in from Ground Game LA that we're going to talk to about the election, and just want to give you guys a sense of where I'm coming from, because it might sound like it's coming from a certain vantage point, and there's some truth to that. But the reality is that I grew up thinking one way, and now I think another way. So I've been both, and I've been other ways too. I guess what I'm trying to say is that growing up amid the Dick and Marilyn show, being the son of Elmer Gantry's bitch, it's kind of a specific thing. I was a kid. I was trying to please my folks. I really enjoyed the words that my mother taught me to read, and folks who were clever purveyors of those words caught my attention. Folks like Mark Twain, folks like William F. Buckley Jr. Before I knew it, I was watching Firing Line and enjoying it immensely. I was reading National Review and the American Spectator. So clearly, I was into Ronald Reagan. I was into Oliver North. That was my 80s, my childhood. I went to a Christian boys' state called City on a Hill, where it was like a mock Congress. We elected each other. It taught us how the government worked, but with a very Christian conservative slant. When I was in high school, I founded the Young Conservatives Club. I would write articles against abortion, all kinds of crazy stuff. I literally went to college based on these political beliefs. That's why I chose Hillsdale College. Hillsdale. As we went in detail on the Freddie Morales episode number 8, that had a pretty significant impact on my life. That led to me being kicked out of college. One would argue because of my activities as a student editor. It subsequently led to me being added to the FBI's subversives list. And I didn't change my politics, but it certainly gave me a starting point to ask questions and be curious. And I continued to ask those questions. Fast forward to The Big Short, and my professional life, as well as economic life, changing dramatically. And I was kind of like the dam bursting, and I realized, wow, all the stuff that I grew up believing, it's clashing with the reality I'm experiencing, and it's clashing with the answers I'm getting to some of these questions that I suddenly have the freedom and feel like I can be curious enough to ask. And so is it that perfect moment where I had an opportunity to make a key vote, like many did in 2008. And I didn't even have to get to the point where I thought, what am I going to tell my grandkids when they ask me, what did you vote for the first African-American president? I had plenty of reasons to vote for Barack Obama before I even got to the fact that he wasn't another white guy. I became a member of the Screen Actors Guild, and now I'm a member of the union. Growing up being very anti-union because that's what I was instructed was the right thing to be. But I've experienced a lot of benefits from that union, and I'm very grateful for it. The dilemma of health insurance, not having it, having healthcare needs, and they're not being addressed. Dealing with my multiple PTSDs, dealing with housing and homelessness. This has given me interesting perspectives on politics. I keep coming back from Las Vegas 3 years ago, and just this stunning contrast between these enormous luxury residential towers popping out of the ground, and right by it you have these homeless encampments that didn't exist before, where you had a random homeless person here and there. Suddenly you have these triangles, the medians, they're just covered with tents of folks that don't have a place to live. So, I mean, I don't know how much more clear-cut needs to get that folks who have property and wealth are clearly not doing enough to take care of those who don't. And one might even wonder if they're doing something to actually inflate and create more homelessness, if that's even possible. But apparently, that's what's going on. Anyway, I become a busker. Hashtag it takes a busker. I encounter Mitch, where are you? Who's my LA City Council person, apparently. He tried to criminalize what I do as a busker. And that got me involved with Jessica Salon's campaign running for city council. She ran a valiant campaign. It was an uphill battle. Not surprisingly, she did not win. However, she created this incredible organization, and everyone in it realized, wow, there's something pretty special here. What should we do now? And the phoenix that rose out of the ashes of that election loss was what is now known as Ground Game LA. And it's a phenomenal organization of progressives that are literally trying to make Los Angeles a better city. Literally on the streets doing it. What are some other things that have made me even more of a bleeding heart Hollywood liberal? Well, when I encounter wealthy white folks demanding pictures of my Lieutenant Frank character, and then they laugh at me when I say I do photos for tips and can accept credit cards, as if the very notion that this person in a costume could accept credit cards is beyond silly to them. That really makes me vote Democrat and progressive, and makes me not hear at all anyone who says that I'm concerned about my business, about regulation, I'm paying too much in taxes. I just imagine this very entitled white guy who's fat, who has very expensive clothing and homes and cars, staring at me, laughing that as a working artist, I can accept credit cards for the tips he refuses to pay me, even though he's demanding that I perform for him. So, Republicans, wealthy, white, male, conservative, Christian Republicans turned me into a bleeding heart liberal. Black Lives Matter, Me Too, Time's Up. The simple math of just looking at the U.S. House of Representatives and the U.S. Senate and seeing the disparity between men and women in a nation that is slightly more female than male if you look at the population. I mean, these are just, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to kind of figure that something's up here. And more often than not, the liberal Democratic side seems to have answers that are a little more useful than the other side. So there you have it. Give you a little insight onto where I'm coming from. This week, we got some Twitter posts over at The Mark Roman. There's the guy with two watches who was wary of me. That just happened today. My response to the Boston Dynamics Cylon doing Uptown Funk. My response to YouTube Down. My response to Piers Morgan's response to 007 Daniel Craig being a dad. Shower slippers. Untied? Cool retrospective of Thomas Lennon characters on AV Club. And finally, Lieutenant Frank's response to National Coming Out Day. All that's this last week on Twitter at The Mark Roman. On Instagram, where I am Vegas90210, you might have seen this past week, Incoming by Hollywood Cap, Logan and Spawn. My Hollywood Cap, Civil War with Hulk. Check that out. The four heads of the Hollywood Avengers, as well as the Hollywood Avengers at Night with New Guy, Hollywood Spidey. And lastly, Lieutenant Frank contending with headlines, Naked People. I'm sorry. Lieutenant Frank contending with headless naked people at a tailgate. All that and more at Vegas90210 on the Instagram. Where can you see me next? Well, Lieutenant Frank has been a little rare and scarce these days on Hollywood Boulevard, but he does make cameos, so look out for that. Lieutenant Frank, the football tailgates he'll be at. We got 3 coming up on the 26th, UCLA versus Utah, if I don't have jury duty. The 27th, USC versus Arizona, and the 28th, LA Rams versus Green Bay Packers. My friend MRE Evans is probably going to be there, I imagine, because she's a huge Packers fan. And she's got a really cool script floating around town for those of you who like to do TV or new media productions. Look at what Anne-Marie Evans has got cooking. She's got some interesting names attached. I'm just saying, you might be upset if, you didn't know about it, because it's going to be pretty cool. What else do we got here? Hollywood Cap on Hollywood Boulevard with the Hollywood Avengers. You can check that out with Hollywood Iron Man, Hollywood Wolverine, and now we got Hollywood Spidey. Don't forget, kids, you can listen to the podcast on Mixcloud, Podbean, Stitcher, TuneIn now, as well as YouTube. All those platforms, we are Mark Roman Empire. On SoundCloud, it's Mark Roman Podcast. But just go to markromanempire.com, and that has all the links, plus rolling new grooviness. So today it's a little different. I don't have an interview guest per se. It's the election special. And so I brought in from Ground Game LA. I hope to have a lady, because it's kind of about us guys listening for once after all these millennia. But as fate would have it, the ladies of Ground Game LA are fighting really hard for ladies. Like there's a bunch of Katies running for Congress. So they're doing phone banks and really important work like that. But I do have Ace Katana here. He works with the LA County Public Defender's Office. That's right. He's an attorney. and we're going to go over my ballot and see. I might make some decisions here right on the podcast as to how I'll vote. I don't know. We'll see. Let's check in with Ace at Ground Game LA. Ace Katana.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. You are of Ground Game LA.
I am.
And I just got to say right off the bat, there's no ladies here.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. It's the run up to the election. Everybody's busting their asses working on various things. And they unfortunately weren't free to come participate. So...
Well, I'm grateful that you were free. I know I was really hoping that Jessica could be here, Jessica Salons, because she's the whole reason I even am aware of Ground Game LA and got involved.
She's kind of the reason it exists, basically.
Right.
So, we did start from her campaign, which, that's how I know you.
Right.
So, like all that, the decision.
To let the listeners know, she was running for the Los Angeles City Council seat that's currently held by Mitch. Oh, where are you? Is that his name? Oh, Mitch O'Farrell, I think,
right?
Perhaps.
And so, through the process of that campaign, as you were working on it, also once it had a certain democratic attitude to it, a certain sort of freewheeling attitude. So when the campaign wrapped up, we all decided, let's keep going, let's keep doing work, and let's stay involved.
Yeah, this organization, like we didn't get dressed up for nothing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Speaking of dressed up,
I always get dressed up.
You just set down your is that herringbone? I want to say
houndstooth.
Houndstooth. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Your houndstooth jacket. And revealing your white shirt and black tie, and folks might say, is he trying to convert us to Mormonism? And that'd be no, because we just walked past the Tom Cruise. It's not memorial because Tom is still with us and he's still following me on the Twitter, but it is the Tom Cruise.
He follows you on Twitter?
Oh, he does.
Have you?
It's insane. I barely have 1,000 followers on Twitter, but one of them, there's like over 30 or 40 verifieds. One of them, Tom Cruise. Huh. Yeah, I'm afraid now that we're here, I'm going to really have to have like a recurring weekly segment about Tom Cruise.
Oh my God.
Like, let's have coffee, Tom. Like you're stalking me. You're stalking me on Twitter. But we're getting beside the point here. We walked past the Tom Cruise Scientology hostel.
Yes.
Oddly enough, a friendly hostel.
Is it?
It is.
How friendly is it?
Well, there's those people like, smartly dressed handing you literature so they have smiles on their faces. What could go wrong, right?
Nothing could go wrong.
Nothing could go wrong. Anyway, you walk in here, you've got this, this shirt and tie because, as I understand it, you are a counselor. You are an attorney who works for
the County of Los Angeles Public Defender's Office.
Impressive.
So that's my day job. When I'm not causing trouble, I am in a courtroom causing trouble. I'm always causing trouble somewhere. That's what I do.
Any little anecdote that's for public consumption from today or this week that might be kind of fun to get a glimpse of what your day is like?
This week's been a little quiet. I just transferred to the Central Court downtown for a felony rotation. So I'm felonies. I was at East Lake Court doing juvenile work for the last couple of years, but just went downtown back to felony trial court, settling in and, picking up my new cases. So it's been a little quiet, nice little transition period.
Okay.
The Central Court, the one on Temple, it's 19 stories tall. It's very old and it has no potable water. So that's a thing.
You are an attorney. You said potable. It's for some of our listeners who might have gone to Hillsdale College, what is potable? Counselor, please define terms.
There's no water in the building that's safe to drink.
Potable means safe to drink. Yeah. That's for those of you at Hillsdale College. You're welcome.
So that's a thing. Everybody has to get water delivered or pick things up. It's kind of weird because you'd think that.
Interesting.
Yeah. I think the pipes are questionable.
You think?
Yeah.
Interesting.
At least I question whether they're questionable.
Very interesting. So as a public defender, correct me if I'm wrong, but what that means is, let's say
what it means
I get picked up and the allegation, vicious as it is that I killed somebody. And I go, well, I don't have any money for an attorney. You're the type of guy that might possibly represent me on the taxpayer's expense because I have no legal counsel.
Right.
Because I can't afford it.
We're guaranteed under the Constitution. You're guaranteed.
It's the Miranda warning where it said if you're unable to
afford counsel, one will be provided. Sixth Amendment, right to counsel, Gideon v. Wainwright, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
You're one of those people that might be provided.
Yes. Okay. So in Los Angeles, we are fortunate to have a large and well-organized public defender's office. It's probably 675 attorneys right now.
Wow.
It was 660 a minute ago when we were unionizing, but I know they've hired a couple more people since then.
Are you guys unionized?
That's another story. We part of my big project this year was organizing the union drive effort. So
nice.
So a few of us got together and put in the work and got a majority. So we're unionizing with AFSCME Council 36. Shout out to Tris Carpenter.
Nice.
And we're about to go into our first contract negotiation ever.
Well, as a member of the Screen Actors Guild, a card-carrying member of a labor union, I'm very encouraged to hear that you're in the midst of that, and I support you, brother, soon-to-be union member.
Yeah, thank you. I think the union representation is incredibly important, especially right now. I think people aren't.
Absolutely. Yeah.
If people should seriously think about unionizing if they plan on being somewhere for any sort of long period of time. I mean, it's even in the short time that we've been officially organized, it's been able to.
So you are official now.
We are official. It is confirmed. It was confirmed by the.
And which national major? Because there's like AFL-CIO.
We're with AFSCME. So
what's AFSCME?
American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees.
Okay.
We.
Yeah. Okay. It's government. Whereas AFL-CIO is private sector.
Right. They're more. They're more. Manufacturing and other private sector.
Right.
But so we got organized, and even in the short time that we've been official, we've already been able to use the fact that we're organized, the laws that protect us, and the sort of clout that comes with having that sort of organization to move a couple things to get some attention on stuff that would have been ignored by the county board previously.
Oh, wow. So you're already seeing results.
I mean, it's a big thing. It is the largest criminal defense firm in the world.
Wow.
So
crazy.
Yeah. So it has the potential.
There's a lot of reverberations from what you guys are doing.
Right. I mean, we have the potential through this union to have a huge impact on criminal justice policy in California, which is hugely important because everybody's talking about reform.
Well, yeah, we're like the trendsetters and kind of set the stage for what other states might want to do.
We like Kendall from Ground Game always says, when she goes visits relatives outside of California, she says, "Oh, I'm here from the future." Because definitely California has set a lot of those trends, not only the good ones, but also the bad ones.
Sure.
Right? The whole 3 strikes law craze started in California. That's where you had people getting life in prison for like stealing a bottle of perfume or something like that. And the SWAT teams were invented in Los Angeles. The whole police militarization thing.
Sure. LAPD.
So we're used to thinking of California as very liberal, but also some of the most illiberal policies also started.
Dare we say fascist?
I mean, yeah. I mean, like that's one of the things about that is the sort of policies and practices of the LAPD in the 80s and late 70s.
The Daryl Gates era.
There's some wild stuff. I mean, back in the day, LAPD used to have a thing called the Red Squad, which just went around beating up communists. Like that was their thing. It wasn't like not even attached to any sort of real understanding of law.
Sure.
They go beat up communists, and that was their whole purpose. So it is heartening to see people in California pushing back against that sort of criminalization and police state sort of attitude. A lot of major bills relating to criminal justice reform have been passed in the last 2 years. I talked about some of those on the Ground Game podcast with Tim the other day.
Well, hold on one sec here, because I do want to get to something, because this is our election special. Cause it's a little different. And normally I have guests and I interview them. We cover the ABCs, actors, buskers, bands, comics, and we kind of...
The ABBCs?
What's that?
The ABBCs?
Sure. Yeah, I like that. It's like ABBA, but with a C, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah. I just want to touch a little bit on who Ace is, and then I want to literally go right in a little bit on Ground Game LA, and then I want to go right into the actual ballot that I have here, so we can kind of go over, and we can touch on some of these different topics in the context of what's actually on the ballot. Does that sound cool?
Sounds great.
Nice. So let's get back to your shirt and your tie. So you're not a Mormon. You're a public defender for the county of Los Angeles.
Right.
And I inadvertently restricted your jurisdiction on the walkover.
Yeah. No,
it's not the city, Mark. It's the county of Los Angeles.
It is the county.
I stand corrected, counselor. But you just rolled up your sleeves, and you got some pretty sweet tattoos going on there. And is this not true? You were in a band once?
I was in a rock band.
That covers the bees. That's one of the bees we cover here.
That is actually accurate.
So you got to talk about that for a sec. What kind of band? What'd you play?
Back when I was in Chicago, I was in a rock band. We were called Leopold and Loeb, which is named after the
law firm.
Sort of the famous murderers.
What?
Yeah, Leopold.
It sounds like a law firm.
It
to my ears.
Kind of does. There were two students at the University of Chicago, which is where we were, who got a little wrapped up in their own thing and became convinced that they were Ubermenschen and decided to commit the perfect crime by kidnapping and killing a neighbor's child. It was really crazy. And then the legendary defense attorney Clarence Darrow was hired to defend them and saved them from the electric chair.
The Scopes trial.
Yeah, exactly. That guy. And
Inherit the Wind was based on that trial, loosely.
He saved them from the electric chair and got them life in prison instead. And in this, it's a famous thing, especially it was, we were at the University of Chicago, so natural fit. So we were a sort of noise rock band, like sort of poppy noise rock, kind of like Cheap Trick or The Who, that sort of direction.
Nice.
I played guitar, I sang. My roommate played bass and sang.
Right.
It was fun.
And there's rumors that perhaps some of the Ground Game folks, there might be a band.
Maybe. It's been a long time since I've played music seriously because all the other things eat up a lot of time,
I hear you.
But lots of people still do it. There's actually a really good crowd in the Midwest of these sort of noisy experimental rock bands and like post-punk bands. That still I know a lot of these guys, they all have day jobs. None of them are professionals, but they throw festivals, they throw shows, they record albums, and it's just, they do it because they like making music, and some of the shows are totally fucking amazing, 3-day long festivals with, 30 bands playing.
In the Midwest. It's crazy.
Yeah, stuff, all sorts of stuff. It's pretty cool.
But where will they grow the corn? All right, now tell us a little bit about Ground Game LA.
So Ground Game LA, as mentioned, we started working on Jessica Sounds' campaign and kind of decided, once it finished, we decided to pivot and continue organizing. We had some mentoring from Bill and Kendall from People Organized for Westside Renewal, who really kind of showed us the ropes.
In Santa Monica, right?
They organize mostly in public housing projects. I know Mar Vista Gardens. I know, and in Pacoima. And so they're kind of all over the place, but they kind of showed us the ropes and we went from there. So we are a left-wing local organizing crew, and we don't have leaders. We don't have, positions or those sort of top-down directions. We organize horizontally, and we try to do a lot of things in as many places as we can touch.
I've been to some meetings in the past. I've been negligent in being a good member lately. I've been busy with the podcast here, but
you're welcome anytime. You know that.
I know. I got to come back, plug in.
So
it's a good organization. Yeah. And as I mentioned in the monologue, kids, as you heard earlier, kind of gave you the breakdown about my background. So I'm kind of the alternative for those of you listening, and you're like, well, why is this just all left wing? Well, see, I grew up right wing. I grew up a Reagan revolutionary.
Wow.
So, and as we go over this, I'd be happy to be the devil's advocate for the other side.
Well, it'd be good to get some details.
I knew how to make those arguments and did so very well. I read National Review and the American Spectator as recreation in high school. I actually met with William F. Buckley Jr. in college.
Really?
Before a firing line debate. Yeah, Warren Steibel, his producer, was ready to kill me because I was like the guy that was driving him last minute when he said, I need something from my room. And his room was like the other side of the campus. Oh,
no. I didn't realize you were a little Reaganite.
Oh, I was. I was. Yeah, no. So I grew up a very right wing Reagan Republican, loving Ollie North, supply side economics, all that sort of thing. And now I'm your classic bleeding heart Hollywood card carrying member of the SAG-AFTRA Actors Union, bleeding heart liberal. That's me. And I couldn't be happier because there's this kind of I don't know if you call it a canard or just saying or just there's a word that's escaping me right now, but just this notion that people in their youth are liberal and then when they grow up and learn the ways of the world they become conservative. Well, for me it was the exact opposite.
I think for a lot of people it goes the other way. I think the real reason that applied especially to like baby boomers is because it had to do with not just getting older, but getting property, becoming a member of a different class, becoming attached to a permanent piece of land that you owned, things like that.
And you don't want to lose it.
Yeah, you're concerned about it in a different way. You're
paying taxes.
I'm a fucking millennial. Taxes, we don't own a goddamn thing. We
exactly.
don't. I don't think I'm likely to buy a house anytime in the next decade, and I'm a lawyer.
Or even look at cars. I remember when, getting around in LA without a car, people thought that was nuts that I would do that. They wondered how I even survived. And now with, ride sharing apps, Uber and Lyft and what have you, it's like, why would you own a car? There's a bunch of new alternatives that are kind of coming out of the marketplace where the concept is around, basically some sort of rental model or use model versus an ownership model.
Yeah, I think that just in general,
which is just common sense. It's not even like a matter of like planting a flag somewhere. It's just like for me, it wasn't a political thing. It was like, look, I can't afford to have a car, have a place to put it, worry about paying to park it, worry about it getting broken into or stolen,
parking
having
tickets,
to pay insurance, having to pay for gas, have to pay for the pass on because there's a new toll on some freeway. Just all this stuff.
The catalytic converter was stolen. The tire popped a tire. All sorts of stuff, all sorts of things happen. But really, I do think that has a lot to do with whether people become more radical or more conservative as they get old. I got more radical as I got older. I started from a pretty liberal place to begin with. My parents are both artists. I was born in San Francisco, grew up down here and but in kind of like, sort of mainstream liberal.
So it's interesting. You started in Northern California and then had a few early formative years in the Midwest.
I had a Midwest detour.
I had the Midwest detour as well.
And then
a decade I'll never get back.
At a certain point, I couldn't deal with the cold.
Yeah, me too. That was a big part of it. Sure.
Need to.
Yeah, my son loves it though. He's like at Syracuse in upstate New York now.
God.
Yeah, his mom's like Danish, so he's like, yeah, he's like
naturally
winter
like a
vampire
resistant
with the sun.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, there's an election coming up here.
There is.
Can we go over my ballot here and maybe get some...
sure, let's talk about it.
Get some thoughts. All right, and this is not just any ballot. This is my official vote by mail, which is what they used to call the absentee ballot, but they changed it now to, it's called vote by mail.
Yeah, I think absentee kind of sounds... I don't know. It doesn't really sound appealing. It sounds like you missed class or something.
It's a good upgrade in terms because the bottom line is because other nations they don't have their elections on a work day like a Tuesday. They have them on the weekend,
and that's some just obvious bullshit, right there,
right?
We should have a national holiday for the election day. We should have. People should get paid time off.
Because the working poor are the ones that are going to get penalized in not being able to vote because they're the ones that are risking income. They can't get the day off. They can't get a break.
It's harder for them to vote absentee because they move around more. They're less likely to be at a specific location for an extremely long period of time. It disadvantages people who are like, college students are disadvantaged. The people who benefit the most from this sort of arrangement are old retirees with more money and permanent addresses. Like it skews
people who inherited wealth.
It skews. It does skew the turnout. People should, and also the process of voter registration.
And they have more discretion over their time. They're not they're not punching a clock as such, and they can
exactly. I mean, if you have things like automatic voter registration or same day registration and like paid time off for a national holiday for an election, or just put it on a goddamn weekend, that shifts the entire sort of way that voting fills a void in the
which
body
is
politic,
why if anyone can use the vote by mail if they're registered, you automatically get this, which means I've got the choice that you can either wait until the 6th, November 6th on Tuesday, which is the midterm election, and go vote in person at a local voting station, or I'll do what we're going to do right now. I go over my actual ballot and I can just drop it in the mail between now and the 6th. And anyone who's registered can do this.
I do love the experience of going into the voting.
Now, can people still register? This is going to drop on Monday. What's the deadline for registering?
The deadline for voter registration is October 22nd.
Okay. So we still got a few more days. Wait, 22nd.
So
is that Tuesday of next week? What is today?
I don't know. Time is a flat circle. I'm not sure. Good.
If only we had technology.
Yeah. Hold on. Now I'm feeling like an idiot, and I have to look at a.
What is today? Today's the 18th. So
okay, the 22nd is Monday.
So it's Monday. So the day this podcast drops. So if you're listening to this podcast
and you're not registered,
you can
register online.
You can register online up to midnight Pacific Standard, right?
I believe
theoretically.
So. I believe so.
Okay, so if you listen to this the day it drops, you got 24 hours or less. So go register if you're not already registered. And then if you're already registered, you should already have received this
in
the mail.
Ballot.
And I've opened this up here. I got a secrecy sleeve, which sounds like the name of a band. I got to go here.
That actually does sound
Hello,
like a good
Cleveland. We are secrecy sleeve. But I don't need that secrecy sleeve right now because I actually need to figure out how I'm going to vote. Let's see here. We got the I voted sticker. Okay, a little early for that. All right, so what do we got here? We got the return envelope. Let's put this stuff down here.
He is actually opening his actual ballot. You can't see it, but he's doing it.
All right, so there's blue on the top. Let's see, 2, 4. So I got 3 things here.
Yeah.
5, 6.
They changed the format for the absentee ballots this year. I don't think it's bad necessarily, but it is a bit of a surprise.
All right. And one thing that I realized too, and I think I tweeted about this a week or two ago. I might have mentioned this on the podcast last week. In the state of California, you cannot write in a candidate. And as I'm looking at this, you really can't.
Yeah, you have to.
I think I messaged you about this too. Yeah,
you can do it federally, but
okay. But for the state offices, which is another little kind of jab you in the side with the dagger.
I feel like there is some procedure to get write-in candidates, but I feel like you have to jump through some hoops to be like an official registered.
Oh wait, it does say right here.
Yeah, you have to register as a write-in candidate in some way.
Write-in candidates. To add a candidate, fill in the circle to the left of write-in candidates. So there is a write-in candidate here somewhere. Where is it?
It might be just for the congressional though.
That might be. All right. Well, let's not go down that Primrose path. Let's jump into this, shall we? All right. State office governor. I can vote for one. I got 2 choices.
Well,
I got Gavin Newsom and I got John H. Cox.
And
where's the ladies?
Well, that's a kind of a thing, isn't it? I believe there was only there might have been one woman in contention for the governor's race in the primary, but most of the folks didn't. I'm not actually sure. It was mostly a 3-way race between Newsom, Cox, and Villaraigosa.
That's right, Villaraigosa. Yeah.
Yeah. So I actually have with me 3 voter guides that you cleverly printed out. I've got the Knock.LA voter guide, which is Knock.
Yeah, tell us real quick, what's Knock?
Knock is Ground Game LA's little news journalism project. It's a progressive news source. We do
it's
local.
Like your Mother Jones.
We do local stuff. Yeah, but very local and targeted towards things that are immediate concern to LA that don't always get covered. Like what's going on at City Hall doesn't always get covered,
Right.
And a lot of that stuff.
What happens on Hollywood Boulevard doesn't even get covered. There's a whole
like a lot. And,
that's a whole other podcast.
and that's the thing about all of this, right? Because like LA itself is actually controlled politically by very few people. A 15-person city council, a 5-person county board of supervisors, which is nuts because there are 10 million people in the fucking county, right? So there's a lot of power in very few hands, but
there's
for the
some
most
small
part,
countries that
a
we
lot
rival.
of countries. LA County is bigger than a lot of countries.
Yeah.
LA
We're not talking the state of California, which clearly does. We're talking about just LA County.
Yeah, in terms of size and in terms of wealth. So when you talk about that stuff, even despite that, a lot of attention in LA is directed outwards towards like the national level, which is like, we really need to look at what's going on here because that's a lot of power to put in very few hands.
Well, we'll get to the more local stuff in here in a sec. Let's look at governors. So
we also have the LA Progressive Voters Guide. Is that
that's right? Our voter guides here, and ACLU,
and the ACLU Ballot Guide.
Yeah. And there's just like Emily's List. There's Sierra Club. There's a bunch of great organizations that.
There are a lot. There's Emily's Lists. I know Sierra Club has a
National
voters
Organization
guide.
for Women.
SEIU 721 has a voters guide. Everybody's got a voters guide this year. Everybody's LA Forward.
There is a lot of interest and activity.
Well, it's 2018. It's a real mess.
It's kind of like it's almost like the people are rising up to respond to something.
What could they possibly be thinking of?
I don't know. All right. So when I was a Republican.
Yes.
As I look at John Cox here, and he's a businessman / taxpayer advocate, I imagine that John's been going around the states saying, you know what, you're paying too much in taxes. The government's getting all up in your affairs. What we need is less regulation, and that means that more business can come to our state. When there's more business, there's more jobs. More jobs mean people have more money and they can, it's the pull yourself up by your own bootstraps, trickle down economics.
It's always funny that people say that thing about the bootstraps because as originally proposed, it's supposed to be describing something that's physically impossible. You can't actually pull yourself. Exactly. If you can't pull yourself anywhere by your own bootstraps, you're standing on them.
It's called physics.
Yeah. That's how this works. But yes. So,
which is somehow very apt for what
right.
It's as I've come to find as someone who grew up very Republican, very conservative, there's all these great ideas, but when you start seeing how the ideas actually get implemented, he's advocating for, taxpayers as a businessman. Okay, well, you look at a company like Amazon, which paid exactly how much was it? I went over in the numbers earlier. 0.
Oh, in
federal
I'm glad you remembered
taxes,
that particular statistic.
Yeah, 0 is what they paid. In fact, not only did they not pay taxes, they actually got a huge tax rebate.
Yeah.
So the reality is the folks that have the resources to pay a lot of taxes, it's not even about a fair share. It's about the actual share they don't pay it.
Right.
They don't pay it. So it's like it's a faulty premise,
right?
Because you don't have these good business owners running around doing all those good things. The reality is that too many of them are using every possible advantage they can to pay as little as they possibly can into society.
Absolutely.
And they want to grab every single last cent of profit they can. And there's, the way corporations are set up, the way shareholders are set up.
They're incentivized to do that.
Exactly. So it's you could say it's a system, but to argue that, somehow business is, being all beat up. It's like, well, all I had to do is come back from Las Vegas, where I got stuck for 2 years. I came back 3 years ago. I'm so happy to be back. And I was just shocked at two things. One was these brand new luxury towers, these apartment buildings that just shot up out of the ground in what I recalled were empty lots. And then right next to it, these tents, not even like, the tent cities of homeless people. So, I mean, to me, it's like, it's really clear that, these developers have been given carte blanche to build, and they're not building affordable housing. They're building luxury housing. And you don't need to even like look up statistics when you can clearly see in your own neighborhood that people are clearly homeless, and there's more people in that state than just a few years ago. I mean, you don't need to do any research. The research has come to you.
Yeah, the research is all up
and
in your
anyone who lives in
face.
LA knows exactly what I'm talking about. Anybody who lives in a lot of cities across the nation, San Francisco or many, it's not. This is not something that's being discussed by academics in an ivory tower. That we're literally dealing with this on a day-to-day basis.
And really, it's something that it's something that you're going to see more of in a lot of places, because it's not something that's just the rising rents and the construction of like luxury targeted buildings and the difficulty people have staying in their homes. That's increasing not just in California, but also all over the U.S. And not just all over the U.S., it's actually global, because the real problem here isn't just we're building this type of building instead of this type of building, or we have this zoning or that zoning. It's about how speculative capital is used. It's about here's how stuff works in California. You have something like 13,000 single family homes that are owned by Blackstone, this corporation.
Yeah, exactly.
What they do is they buy up property and they rent it out. But they don't just buy
Thanks to The Big Short.
But they don't just buy up property and rent it out. They also bundle it and securitize their ownership of the property so that they can sell shares not just in their company, but in the ownership, in like the expected rate of return on these properties, which is
similar. If this reminds you of The Big Short, this is exactly what led to The Big Short. Stuff like this.
Right.
Yeah.
So actually, if we're going to talk about this, maybe we should jump down the ballot a little to the ballot measures, because the big topic of discussion, I think, recently has been Prop 10.
Yeah, let's do that in a quick second.
Okay,
we got to run through. So
go.
we got to make some quick decisions here. So I think I argued for John. Let's argue for Gavin. And what does the voter guide say here?
Well, I think that Gavin Newsom has a lot of problems, but I agree. He is fairly progressive, at least in his politics. He is part of that San Francisco political machine. And so he has done some very progressive things. He has also done a lot of things that benefit
LGBT community. It can be grateful for a lot of ththings he's done.
Exactly, and he did play a role in pushing through San Francisco's healthcare plan, which is a big thing.
Yeah, good point. Yeah,
but he's also done many things that benefit the very rich, and he won't endorse Prop 10. That's another thing. So he is like a lot of Democrats. He's progressive on a number of issues, but also still kind of beholden to these sort of wealthy donors and that sort of class. But it's not like,
so we got two wealthy white guys.
We got two wealthy white guys. And
right, so what does Ground Game LA recommend?
Ground Game says Newsom, definitely.
All right. What does the progressive LA say?
They are in agreement.
What does ACLU say?
ACLU doesn't address particular candidates because I think first it's against their policy too, but also the way they're organized as a nonprofit, they're not allowed to endorse or back particular candidates.
But they can have opinions and do on the propositions.
Exactly.
All right, so we'll get to that later. So we'll hold off ACLU on the candidates then.
Yeah.
All right, so I got my Sharpie pen here. I'm filling in. I'm begrudgingly under protest. I'm voting for you, Gavin, but I'm not liking it, and I think you need more women involved.
And the thing about this is, a general principle that we have in our organizing is that a candidate or an elected official is not going to be a savior. They're not a general, they're a battlefield.
Right.
So the question is, you look at some of these people, you're like, this person's not perfect. This person's better than this. This might be a lesser of two evils situation.
It's like Dianne Feinstein. A lot of people like to get really upset about how she's not perfectly progressive.
Well, we'll get to her in a second.
Okay.
But in general, it's a question of like, in what ways can we move a person? In what ways can we access them? Will we have access? And it's always going to be about how do we shape the battlefield, because the real work of getting reforms passed isn't somebody up on high saying, oh, this is a good idea. It's pressure from below. Something huge and sweeping like ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act.
Yeah.
Like that was created because of massive organizing by extremely radical groups working on behalf of the disabled, and of the disabled.
Let's do this because I got a short bit of time with the podcast here, and we got to get through. We got to touch on a lot.
So
we're
going to
have to go on super lightning speed. There's a lot more podcasts we can do on this, and I definitely want to have you back to do just as yourself talking about being a public defender in the city of Los Angeles.
It's an adventure.
So I had a nurse last week. I'd love to get my congressman on here.
That would be a thing.
Yeah, Adam Schiff, who I've actually met. I met at a bowling alley. He was dressed like the dude. It was pretty cool.
Oh, yeah. I remember seeing that picture.
Yeah. All right, so let's go to Lieutenant Governor, which is Gavin's old job. And I see 2 Democrats, and one is not a dude, right? Am I reading this right?
That is true.
Is it Elaney?
Elaney is not a dude.
Okay.
And so I'd note that we didn't make a recommendation on that one. LA Progressive endorsed both of them, which seems like not the most helpful thing they could have done. But there isn't, broadly speaking, from what I understand, there isn't too much daylight between them in terms of position. It's not one situation like Newsom and Cox are very different on parts of the ideological spectrum.
I'm going to make this really easy because I want to spend some time with some other things.
Yeah.
If they're even, it's like I'm voting for the lady.
That's
because when we look at the numbers, and even when we don't look, just look at this ballot right here, Artie. The guy who's governor is a guy. It's going to be a guy regardless, how the election turns out. So that's easy. Yeah. Elaney, boom, voted. All right, Secretary of State. We got 2 dudes.
Well, on a lot of these other races, we
Republican and Democrat. We
have a pretty clear Republican-Democrat lineup for a lot of the more obvious races like controller, treasurer, attorney general, things like that.
So what's Ground Games LA's stance on Secretary of State? Because I don't recognize either of these guys.
We're not huge fans of Padilla, but he definitely is.
He's the Democrat.
He's much preferable to his opponent.
Okay.
I mean, what does happen sometimes in California is you get people in the Republican side who have no real chance of winning. So because of how the imbalance, you get some really wild people deciding to.
Yeah, because there's no. Yeah.
So you get some wild people.
Party's probably not even
exactly.
All right. Well, I'm going to go for the Democrat who doesn't sound like he's a white guy. Alex Padilla for Secretary of State. All right. Controller. We got Betty, a lady, Yee, and Konstantinos, who's a Republican.
And Spike from Knock described him, Konstantinos, as cartoonishly awful. So
nice.
He has a clear perspective.
So what's Ground Game's perspective?
We're definitely Yee on that one.
She's a lady. She's a Democrat. That's all I need to know. On some of these things, it's that clear cut and easy for me. All right, Treasurer. Fiona Ma and Greg Conlon. Similar situation. And what is the difference between the treasurer and the controller? It seems like that's the same thing, doesn't it?
The technical difference is not something that I really quite get. It does seem like there would be a lot of overlap between those two things.
Isn't it interesting that the matchup here is kind of similar?
Not just Democratic women, but also...
Is Betty Yee Asian? Is Fiona Ma, is she Asian too?
Yeah.
Wow.
That's a funny coincidence.
Of course, but Greg Conlon doesn't sound very Greek. That sounds very very Kavanaugh. Frat boy. All right, I'm voting for Fiona.
Reasonable.
Because I kind of feel like I just voted twice for the same thing and the same person, possibly, with all due respect to Betty A. and Fiona Ma, but then there's 2 more women, whereas it might have just been 1 more woman in state office. All right, Attorney General, we got Xavier Becerra. Sorry, Xavier. That's an awesome name. And Stephen Bailey.
Yes, and Becerra's been doing a pretty good job he's been filing a lot of lawsuits against the Trump administration and doing a pretty good job of standing up for some of the things that we've passed in California that the national Republicans would like to undermine.
All right. So I'm going to go with Xavier.
Yeah. So some of these races, I think you're going to find it pretty easy to choose which way to mark your ballot in these cases where you have, Republican and Democrat matchups. I mean, I think for most of us, the choice is already made one way or the other.
Yeah, insurance commissioner. These are pretty easy here. Ricardo Lara, member State Board of Equalization.
An interesting thing about the insurance commissioner is that Lara's opponent claims to have no party affiliation.
Yeah,
but that's not true. He's been a Republican for his whole career. Ain't that
Steve Poizner's claiming to not be a Republican?
Yeah.
Gotcha. Interesting.
Claiming to be unaffiliated, but
yeah, my dad's an insurance agent. I'll tell you this right now. They, yeah, it's evil industry. Sorry, guys, it's an evil industry. not too dissimilar from banking, which I was a part of. And
that's true.
Apologies. All right, member of State Board of Equalization. That's taxes, right?
Okay, the State Board of Equalization is weird because most of its power has been stripped away and distributed to other parts of the government. So it actually has very little importance. There's one individual running, Tom Hallinan, whose official position is that as a member
Why do
of
I not see him on the ballot? Oh, he's not in my area?
It might be not in your area.
Okay.
But his official position is that he will destroy the Board of Equalization. That's his position, because it doesn't actually serve a significant purpose anymore. The vast majority of its power has been delegated elsewhere. It's kind of like it's like an appendix, It's like tonsils. It's like government tonsils,
I'm going to vote for Tony Vasquez. He's the Democrat from Santa Monica City Council here. All right, this one's a little contentious. Kevin DeLeon versus Dianne Feinstein for U.S. Senator.
Okay, this is a one that draws a lot of attention. I come down firmly on Kevin DeLeon's side.
Okay,
in this,
he is a very popular progressive choice.
Now there are some arguments for Feinstein, mostly in terms of her experience and power and her ability to potentially act as a counterweight. There are a couple things, however, that are big problems for me. One is that Feinstein does not have a history of supporting civil rights, just broadly. She is very anti-privacy, very pro-surveillance, involved in a lot of legislation and positions that really make it easier for the government to get into our lives and see what we're doing, hear what we're doing. She is not somebody who's standing up to the Patriot Act. She's not somebody who's standing up to wiretapping.
Right.
She's all about those things. She's also very pro-defense industry in terms of the major contractors.
This is true.
So those are things that for me are like deeply concerning.
Yeah.
But here's another thing that I think is interesting, which is that the chances of her filling out this entire term, the next 6 years, are very low. She is old.
Because
she is old. There were concerns that she was not going to run again just because of age. If she dies or retires in the next 6 years, the governor gets to appoint a senator.
Which is probably going to be Gavin.
Which would probably Gavin gets to choose whoever he wants.
Yeah.
That obviously creates a lot of opportunities for sort of insider dealing and corruption. And it really...
Because it won't be an election. It'll be an appointment.
It won't be an election. It'll be an appointment. And that'll really take that choice out of the hands of the public. And once you have somebody as an incumbent senator, even if they were appointed, an incumbent Democratic senator who is not elected is still going to have a huge advantage in staying into office. So one of my concerns is that if Feinstein gets reelected, we're going to lose control.
What does Ground Game LA say?
We say De Leon.
Okay. What does the LA Progressive say?
That's a good question. Let me see here. They say They also say De Leon.
No, okay, Celia doesn't it?
But so that is an interesting one, and that concern.
You know what?
About the
I hear the arguments to the progressives. There's just too many women not in the Senate, and there's a lot of things that Dianne Feinstein has done historically. I got to go with Dianne Feinstein, but okay. I have respect for the arguments for Kevin. I think there's got to be more women, and the idea of taking a woman out of office and replacing it with a guy when the numbers are so skewed, I can't do it. Adam Schiff, you need to find a woman to replace you, because I know you're going on to bigger, better things, and I want you on the podcast, Adam. I'm voting for you, okay? And that's not a bribe, okay? I've met you, I like you, but I also do need your help. Probably Kamala Harris's help on that whole why am I on the FBI subversive list from back when I was a student editor.
Oh, am I about to get put on it too? I'm probably on it already.
Probably.
Yeah.
Should we also mention that the little disclaimer here, you are not in any way, all your opinions expressed are yours and yours alone. You are not speaking on behalf of the County of Los Angeles.
Yes, I'm not speaking on behalf I am speaking for Ground Game, but I'm not speaking for the Public Defender's Office.
Of the city, of the County of Los Angeles.
Of the county.
All right. Now, we got some of the big ones here. There's more stuff. I'm going to have to take it offline because of time. Let's jump over to the measures.
Yeah, can I do a couple shout outs real quick?
Yeah.
There's one particular person running for judge in Office 60 who I'd like to give a shout out to, who is Holly Hancock, a public defender running for judge, the only public defender running for judge in LA this cycle. Okay. She's amazing. She used to be my court partner, so we worked together for many years, and she's fantastic, and I'm hoping she takes it.
Nice. There's a Katie running for Congress, right?
There are multiple Katies running for Congress, actually. Okay. Katie Hill is running in CD.
Katie Hill is what I'm thinking of.
And Katie Hill is running in the Valley to try to flip that district to the Democratic Party. I know that's actually where some of the other Ground Game folks are right now, working on stuff to try to get her elected.
Right, understandably.
And then there's also Katie Porter, I believe, in Orange County.
Okay.
Let me just check that to make sure I'm not absolutely losing my mind. Oh, it's in Orange County. So that's a little outside of our orbit, but I know some of our other friends are down there working to get her elected. So a good year for Katie's.
Nice. Can we jump to the state measures here?
Yeah, let's talk about those.
All right. Let's start with 10. We've been hearing a lot about that.
10. What 10 does is pretty simple. There's a law in place called Costa-Hawkins. Costa-Hawkins means we can't have rent control.
Basically, this is the rent control one. Yeah.
Exactly. All rent control laws were frozen on the date that Costa-Hawkins was passed in 95. That's why rent control in LA is, there's no rent control if the building was built after 1978. Similarly, if somebody hasn't had it yet, they can extend it up to 1995, but that's as far as they can extend it. And it also prevents it from applying to things like single-family homes, which goes back to Blackstone, as we mentioned earlier, and those sort of absentee landlords. So basically, the law just restricts local municipalities from creating rent control laws. And it was something that was passed after, several rounds of attempts by
Costa-Hawkins. Costa-Hawkins does that. But this state measure 10
would just repeal Costa-Hawkins.
Okay, so Ground Game LA's vote on this is...
Extremely, yes. I think it's one of the most important things that we're going to be dealing with this election cycle.
This one is, and I actually heard someone from the Apartment Owners Association on KPCC. I listened to you, Larry Mantle, and the other folks on KPCC, but I dip in and out. And Larry, would love to have you on the podcast. Yeah, their arguments, I'm sorry, it falls, the Apartment Owners Association, they're complaining about taxes, they're complaining about regulation, they're alleging that, there's too much regulation, that's why there's not enough affordable housing here. It's like, sorry.
Right.
I came back 3 years ago to LA I'm walking around. Anyone with eyes can see these huge luxury residential apartment towers that have just risen out of the ground, and these huge homeless encampments. It's abundantly clear that the scales are weighed so heavy against people who are in need and in favor of, I mean, I don't want to hear from anybody I pay too much in property taxes. I'm sorry. There's not a single person in the state of California that can look me in the eye and honestly tell me that they pay too much in property taxes. Because my response is, if you feel that way, you better hurry up and sell.
Right.
Because you clearly are not in a financial position to properly manage. I say that as someone who used to own a home. I say that as someone who used to be licensed in the state of California as a mortgage loan originator. Yeah. I dealt with this for a decade. So I'm sorry. It's whining to me from entitled, fat, wealthy people. I'm voting yes.
Woo.
On 10. That's super easy. All right. So I feel like 8 is the next kind of biggest one.
8. Well, actually, if you're talking about people complaining about
kind of most, the biggest issue ballot measures here.
Well, here's one. If you're complaining about people complaining about their property taxes, if you're saying like, well, Prop 5 is...
Let's go to Prop 5.
Prop 5, which
changes
also...
requirements for certain property owners to transfer their property tax base to replacement property.
Basically, what they're trying to do is they're trying to keep their low property taxes when they buy better places.
I'm guessing that ground game says no.
Yes, we say no.
I'm a no on that too.
It's a really ridiculous cash grab. It's really bizarre.
Yeah. All right. So 8, would that be possibly next year?
8.
As far as like big issues.
Is that the dialysis?
Yeah. Regulates amounts outpatient money dialysis clinics charge for dialysis treatment.
We're solidly yes on that one. Tim wrote a very strongly worded article about that because he's very used to dealing with the sort of inflated prices for medical costs because he's diabetic. Basically, it restricts the profit margin to 15%, so they can still make money. It's just restricted if they're making more than 15% of their net as profit, then they have to start putting money into the facilities and lowering the cost of care. So it's by and large, it's mostly been supported by the medical unions and so forth. A couple private healthcare providers have disapproved of it because obviously it would limit their possible profits from dialysis. But there's something fucked up if a life-saving, necessary, regular procedure. It's not even something that somebody needs. If somebody needs dialysis, they're doing it like 3 times a week, 4 times a week.
Yeah, it's a pretty dire situation.
Yeah. And so something like that's so necessary shouldn't be something that can just be infinitely milked for profit.
Right. So ground game LA's...
We say yes.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
It sounds like an easy yes to me. All right. Now, due to time, I wish I could go into the rest of the ballot measures and the rest of... the candidates, but...
Is there anyone that you're really curious about? Well, that would be we could discuss, actually.
Is there one more? Let's do. Is there like one more? What's the one that you would think is the most that we already did 8, 5, and 10?
Well, here's an interesting one. There's an LA charter measure, which is Measure B, which is related to the creation of a public bank. And that's just a really interesting one because it's
that's
not
interesting. Yeah.
It's not something that would happen overnight. It's something that would take several years to maybe like 5 or more years before it would be established.
Is that like a local Federal Reserve, but instead of the Federal Reserve funneling it to the bank, the bank is the Federal Reserve?
Well, the main
simplistic way of putting it.
Kind of. The main thing would be the idea is to create a city-controlled bank. The bank is not driven by a profit motive and is capable of lending money, particularly to the city. One thing that happens...
Let me just ask you this.
Yeah.
What does the banking industry think of this idea?
No, they don't like it at all.
I'm voting for it. That's all I need to know. Yeah. That's all I need to know.
One thing that happens right now is that when LA does big infrastructure projects or things like that, because we don't have infinite liquidity, loans have to be taken out. Right now, those loans mean like a Wells Fargo or something profits. But if there was
don't even get me started on Wells Fargo.
Yeah, right.
They are literally criminals.
Literally, I don't know how every single person wow.
I mean, in the very town where you shot Heat about bank robbers, it's like, okay, Bobby De Niro would now play a friggin' executive at Wells Fargo,
the bank
who oversees a division that literally goes into Wells Fargo customers' accounts and literally pulls money out of it through bogus fees.
Yeah.
Oh, it's beyond disgusting.
It's a real the call is coming from inside the house.
I wish we
situation.
could have gone even more in depth. I hope you guys this gave you a little bit of taste. If people want to see the full voter guide, where do they go for Ground Game LA?
For Ground Game, if you go to Knock.LA, KNOCK.LA, it's going to be the top thing.
Yeah, that's how I find it.
The voter guide. So, and once that's done with, there's lots of other fun content on that site
and that's on the Knock site. Now, if you want to go to the Ground Game LA site, which also has a link to Knock, what's the Ground Game LA?
Well, for Ground Game, it's better. It's better and easier to go to Facebook, Ground Game LA, or Twitter at Ground Game LA, because those update more often.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Okay.
I don't know how to work the website, so I don't know.
Well, I went on the website earlier today, and that's just groundgamela.org.
Yeah.
I think they had the links to everything. That's how I got to the Knock site, and Knock had the voter guide.
Yeah.
This is the top one. Well, awesome. Well, Ace, I wish we could have gone more in depth here, but I feel like we hit some good
hit
stuff.
some of the more interesting ones.
Yeah.
Some things like, I don't think your average listener is going to be having much of concern of whether they're going to vote for the Democrat or the Republican in a lot of these. They've probably come down one way or the other.
I like to hope that, there's some folks that might be curious about why would someone who, was a Reagan revolutionary and loved Oliver North and was a Christian conservative, why he's now super happy being an agnostic card-carrying member of a trade union.
Why did you like Oliver North?
Because it was next to the Kool-Aid on the elephant table.
Yeah. Okay.
It was a thing back then. That was a flag. Just like now, it'd be Kavanaugh if I was still on that side.
Yeah,
it's your guy
in the tribe.
Yeah, a total tribal. That's a really good way of putting it. Anyway, Ace, you're awesome.
Thank you for having me on.
Oh, my pleasure.
Thank you for having me on to talk about this stuff.
Oh, and this is the first time I did this, so sorry guys if it's a little unwieldy, but I thought it was important. Most importantly, get registered by the 22nd, and once you're registered, go vote. Either vote like I'm doing here by mail, or go find your polling place and vote on November 6th.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ace.
Absolutely.
All right. Oh, that was awesome with Ace from Ground Game LA. I wish we'd had some of the ladies here, but I hope you guys got a good taste of what it's like for me to grow up a Reagan revolutionary, a Christian conservative, and now to be an older, and I like to think slightly wiser, bleeding heart, union belonging to Hollywood liberal. So check out the Knock.LA site for the complete voter's guide, because we didn't get a chance to go into everything there. And then I still got to finish my ballot here and get that thing in. Don't forget, you can do that too. If you're listening to this the day this drops, you got just the balance of today till midnight, the 22nd. Get registered. And once registered, you got until the 6th to vote. You can vote on the 6th at an election facility, or just do what I'm doing, It's a lot more convenient. Just do the vote by mail and be sure to get in before the 6th. Tag, you're it. Go vote. Show notes are at markromanempire.com for any links or other groovy stuff mentioned. Hey, do you guys read the show notes at all? Let me know. RomanPodMail@gmail.com. Give me a shout. You can listen to this glorious podcast now in double digits on Mixcloud, Podbean, SoundCloud, Stitcher, YouTube, and now TuneIn. There's even an Apple Music hack until we get in the store. MarkRomanEmpire.com. Click listen. More platforms in progress. Hey, you want special deals? Join my mailing list. The Mark Roman Empire Census. What kind of deals? Well, last week's census members enjoyed 2-for-1 on my Lieutenant Frank glossy photo, autographed. What deal will it be this week? Whatever it is, it will only be available to those of you included in the Mark Roman Empire Census. To join the census, go to markromanempire.com and click Census. Twitter at @TheMarkRoman. Instagram as ever at Vegas90210. You can email me at the podcast at romanpodmail@gmail.com. I'm liking the new digs here. I hope you guys kind of bear with me today. I'm getting used to the new environs. There's a lot to be said about having a comfort level when you're, in a familiar place. And this is now a familiar place. I'm really grateful to Ollie. He's kind of been the Lewis and Clark on my podcast expedition here, and I'm grateful to that guy because he's a Brit. That's very American of him. I like that about him. Hey, until next week, go vote. And remember Clownolin and Prince St. Paul, I am the Mark Roman.